Well, in the last 24 hours, we have seen a new push from the Obama administration and top Democrats who appear to be putting blame, in part, for the Benghazi terror attacks on a lack of funding for security at our consulate in Benghazi. Now, this comes after we heard the State Department saw internal documents and listened to testimony from diplomats who were on the ground in Benghazi ahead of the September 11th attack, all saying that security was inadequate. Here's what we heard from the president himself yesterday.
We're going to need Congress's help in terms of increasing the number of our Marine Corps Guard who protect our embassies. We're not going to be able to do this alone. We're going to need Congress as a partner.
Again and again, Republicans have blocked, opposed, or reduced embassy security funding.
I think the Benghazi scandal, in quotes, starts with the Republicans looking in the mirror. Mirror, mirror, who's the fairest of them all? They ought to ask, mirror, mirror, who cut the funding for diplomatic security across this world for America? The answer, Republicans. They cannot stand the heat, so they turn it on Secretary Clinton, and that is completely wrong.
Joining me now, Utah Congressman Jason Chaffetz, who's on the House Oversight Committee. He's been looking into this. He joins us from Capitol Hill. Congressman, good to see you again. So I just want to make clear, obviously, security was inadequate on the ground in Benghazi, Libya on 9/11 of 12. And that's why we have 4 dead Americans, in part. The question is, why? Why was it inadequate? And now what we're seeing is a growing call from Democrats, and you saw it there with Barbara Boxer, saying it's your fault. It's the Republicans in Congress who failed to fund these security, these embassies and consulates and outposts so that they could protect themselves. Your response?
Well, the Democrats say that we politicize things. Let me give you the facts, Megyn. From 2008 to 2012, they've had more than a 90% increase in security funding. That's 18% annualized. In 2012 alone, they got $400 million more than they had the year before. We had Charlene Lamb testify that in Benghazi, that security decisions had nothing to do with funding. Funding did not block the push for more security in Benghazi. And then we heard from the chief financial officer of the State Department, who has also said in an email that security decisions were not impeded by some financial situation. And the troops, or the people that they wanted for these SST teams to be on the ground and protect those people in Libya, that came out of the Pentagon budget. It didn't come out of the State Department budget. And so it's just fiction that the Democrats are trying to lay out there and put blame on Republicans instead of taking personal responsibility for the bad security decisions that were made.
Now, the Washington Post did a fact check on this because Barbara Boxer had renewed that claim and gave her 3 Pinocchios on it, saying, no, the Republicans, while in control, didn't give the president every dollar he wanted for embassy security, nor did the Democrats when they were in control. And that's par for the course on Capitol Hill. You guys don't just give the president a blank check and say yes to his entire budget. But notwithstanding your denials and the Democrats' denials, the funding for embassy security has gone up. It's gone up each and every year, as you point out. But here's what I want to ask you, okay? If it wasn't a lack of funding that led to the lack of security, then why? Because we've seen so much back and forth about these guys begging for more security. They knew al-Qaeda was on the rise. They knew al-Qaeda-affiliated groups or terror groups were on the rise. They were terrified that they were going to get attacked. There was the smoking gun memo in August of 2012, right before the attack, saying we cannot withstand a coordinated attack. And yet, instead of giving them the security, they drew it down. So why?
Well, look, it didn't fit their political narrative. I remember 5 days before the attack, the president had been saying al-Qaeda was on the run and that they were defeating terrorism, and, you know, they had killed Osama bin Laden, which was a good thing. Don't get me wrong, but that just didn't fit their political narrative. What you do hear them pushing for is to, quote unquote, normalize as swiftly as possible. Now, in the world of the State Department, normalize means let's get rid of the trained U.S. troops and let's bring in locals. And when I was there on the ground, I heard firsthand from the people in Tripoli, when I went there that first week of October, they said, we actually had to hire somebody who was a mobile phone salesman to do security. The guy had never handled the gun before because the State Department had pushed to hire locals who were not trained like some special operations person who's gone through the United States military. That push for normalization, I think, was the prevailing thought and the prevailing wind instead of letting the security dictate security.
Yeah, and we had
they wanted
locals,
the politics to
we
be
had
pushed
locals who were
first.
supposed to be helping us protect the consulate on the night we were attacked, and they ran. I mean, there was a question about whether they were in on it and helping those who attacked us. But let me challenge you, because let's take a look at Charlene Lamb. And as you rightly point out, she did tell Darrell Issa that the security situation wasn't because of lack of money. But let's just listen to her. Do we have that soundbite? Listen to her.
Okay.
Ms. Lamb, yesterday you told us in testimony that you received from Mr. Nordstrom a recommendation but not a request for more security, and you admitted that, in fact, you had previously said that if he submitted a request, you would not support it. Is that correct?
Under the current conditions, yes. Sir, we had the correct number of assets in Benghazi at the time of 9/11 for what had been agreed upon.
I don't know. Charlene Lamb was out there saying, "I want everything to look normal." I mean, I mean, was it her? Was it somebody above her? Who is implementing this alleged plan of which you speak?
Well, you got to take the Secretary of State at her word. She said she's responsible. And, you know, this plea of ignorance that you hear from the senior-most officials is not really justification. In fact, that probably scares me more. What bothers me is 4.5 months after the attack, the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton herself, came here and said, I take all the responsibility, but then says, well, the security decisions were made at the local level. But then we heard from the regional security officer, Eric Nordstrom, who said, I was never allowed to implement what I thought we needed in order to secure Libya for the Americans.
And she said she didn't know anything about it. She said,
and then she said,
I knew nothing about
Megyn,
any of that.
Megyn, if she doesn't, I mean, this is Libya after a revolution. If the Secretary of State's not paying attention to that, what are they paying attention to? It's not like we have some big uprising in the Seychelles or something. Libya should be a priority, and of course the Secretary of State should be responsible for that. There's no excusing that.
Congressman Jason Chaffetz, thank you, sir.
Thank you.